All right. Howdy, everyone. Thanks for joining me. This is the first of a few different um, briefings that we're going to do this year. Uh, as in regards to the snowpack and what's going on up here at the snow lab, things like that. Looks like we have a relatively small guest list. I'm not super surprised at that, given that New Year's Day was yesterday. So Happy New Year to everyone. And this is Um, typically not the most important measurement of the year, but it gives us a good indication of where we are with the snowpack overall. So, first things first, you guys can hear me, I'm hoping. Can somebody throw me a thumbs up or something like that if you can? Maybe. Perfect. Okay, cool.
Yes, we can hear
Thank
you.
you for that. So, without too much more, I'll go ahead and start this thing off. Uh, I am Dr. Andrew Schwartz. I am the director of the UC Berkeley Central Sierra Snow Lab, and I'll be conducting today's briefing. We will have some other folks on throughout this year to do various things. We have a new research scientist, Megan Mason, here at the lab, who will probably be getting involved with these at one point in time. We also have some collaborators from some different organizations that will likely be doing the same. So, to start off, not much snowfall in the last week. We've got about 16 inches that came through, kind of at the end of that Christmas period, realistically. We had plenty of rain, as I'm sure anybody that's been up here recently can tell you. A very saturated snowpack. Apologies that the the camera video is not currently up on the top left because it is the holidays. We have an abundance of folks that are up on the ski hills today, and as our internet is run by Verizon, it's a little bogged down. So it was kind of a choice between doing the briefing and keeping our video running, but that'll be up and going again once I conclude this. So yeah, we've got plenty of good snowfall, and that's where we're sitting right now. To date so far, we've had 137 inches, right? So that's about 40 inches, 38 inches above where we would normally be to this point in time. And that gives us about a 138% of average there. Now, as you guys probably know from hearing me talk before, the big number is snow water equivalent. And if we look at that, in the top right here, we're at 141% of that also because that rain really helped us bulk up our water in the snowpack. And so that was really, really good to have happen. Now, towards the end of that, we did start to see um, some discharge out the bottom of the snowpack, some increases in our stream flows because the water at that point was making its way through the entirety of the snowpack. But that is going downhill. That's filling our reservoirs. So that rain wasn't such a big thing. We do want to see it transition to snow sooner than later, though, especially because we want that good snow to stay in storage as long as we can before we really get to the melt season. This plot is our snow water equivalent compared to the 1991-2020 median. For those that have joined in the past, you probably know why I use this, but it's a concerted effort amongst both state and federal organizations, as well as us researchers, to try to do 30-year averaging periods or median periods, because that's on average what we consider to be a stable climate. So we need 3 decades of that. So this is where we're at again, looking really good for this date. That's a positive thing. We haven't had an early season start like this in a while. In fact, last year we were only at 25% of our peak, or excuse me, 25% of where we should have been by this time. Precipitation, we started off this year relatively light. You can see up until the later portion of December, or November there, we didn't have a whole lot of precipitation, right? We were starting off pretty low. We do start to get concerned when that happens because we really want rain to come in, bulk up the moisture in our soils, because otherwise we have to use moisture from the snowpack to replenish that. That can lead to us getting less water into our reservoirs than expected later on in the season. So we did start a little bit dry with the few storms that we have had. With a lot of rainfall, that's bulked us up. We are now above average, so that's a good thing. Hoping that the storm window stays open, but that's kind of what we're looking at as far as where we've been with the recent storms. If we look at the regional plots, you'll see, yeah, a little bit of something yesterday. We did have some flurries up here on the summit, but nothing that actually accumulated. We didn't do a measurement for that. You can see where we are in that red triangle, our CSSL. So 24-hour snowfall, 48-hour snowfall, 72-hour snowfall, and then the season total on the bottom right. One thing, a theme that we'll probably talk a bit about today is the fact that we have kind of a dividing line through Central California as far as how much precipitation we have gotten. It's kind of a story of two different regions at this point in time. But you can see some of those higher snowfall amounts are typically north of I-80. Below I-80, we still have some decent and higher amounts, but nothing quite to what we've seen up to the northern portion so far. So we're going to switch over to weather condition plots. If you guys haven't used this page yet, I would encourage you to do so. Come over and check it out. So what we see is, let me see here. So what we see here is the weather type. So this will tell you heavy rain, snow, rain and snow mix are unknown. It's not the instrument, especially when we have that kind of transition from rain to snow and back and forth, doesn't do great with it. So in the last 24-hour period, we just have this kind of magenta color saying it didn't know what was going on, but something was falling out of the sky, which can also be useful. As far as our temperatures, yesterday was relatively flat. We do see kind of a bulk up. Today, we are expecting today to be the warmest day for the foreseeable future, with plenty of snowmelt going on out and around us. I'm not going to delve too much more into this page, but just know it's here for your amusement and information whenever you'd like to check it out. Moving on to statewide instead of just the regions around the snow lab. You can see in this map that we've broken down California into three different sections. These were divisions that were created by the California Department of Water Resources. And again, a story of two Californias. Right about where the snow lab is at, we're at 94% of average for our snow water equivalent, and this is based off of automated weather stations, about 200 to 250 of them. So there's a lot of good data points. But yeah, you can see we're about average up here, slightly more depending on where you're at in the Central Sierra. Of course, the big time winner so far this winter has been the Northern Sierra with 161% of normal for this date. And the Southern Sierra are only at 75%. Now, the positive to this is that it all kind of averages out to 108% of average, right? We're seeing that, but we do want to see a better distribution of our snowfall if we can. First of all, for our water supply, but also because obviously our snowpack does wonders to deter fire danger. And so, right now, if we were heading into the summertime, if this was a May scenario and down south is still at 75% of its SWE, we'd be pretty concerned about some increasing fire danger. So we want to see that even out a little bit more over the next couple of months, if possible. This is just kind of a different way of visualizing the previous page. You can see that light shaded blue kind of parabola or area that you have there. And that's what we would expect for an average year in each of these three regions and for the state overall. The different years or different lines, you can see what year corresponds to them here at the bottom. We have our current year, which is this dark blue line. We have the light green, which is last year. We have the minimum year, which is that skinny blue line that was 2015, the water year 2015. And realistically, these numbers next to this fat blue line, those are the April 1st SWE percentage. So what we would expect at April 1st and where we are compared to that. So we have 57% in the northern portion, 35 in the Central Sierra, and 27 to the south. Again, we're not doing too bad, you know. December, January, February, those are our wettest months. So we would expect to be right around 35% as we are in the Central Sierra, or hope to be around 35% in an average year. And up north, more, down south, a little bit less. So time to change that if we see the storm pattern shift up a little bit, though. I see a question in the chat. So I will come back to if you guys have questions or anything as I'm going through this, feel free to throw them in the chat. I will come back to all those at the end of this. So have at it, and I will come back. But I just want to kind of keep rolling through on things until we get there. All right, so that was where we're at with our snowpack around the state. These are our current reservoir levels. Each of those blue lines shows the storage in, I believe this is thousands of acre feet. Yep, TAF. So the capacity on the left, you know, for instance, Shasta is 4,552,000 acre feet. It's always a fun unit of measure is TAF, but you can see this historical average line, these green lines, and the fact that our reservoir storage is for the most part, other than it looks like Folsom, realistically, all of those are above average. And so it's a very positive thing that we're seeing that at this stage in the game. You do see that there is still some headroom in a lot of these reservoirs. Now, that's for two reasons. One, we do those late season releases to prepare for the upcoming year's water. However, we keep as much of that as possible. The other is flood mitigation. Not all of these are used for flood mitigation, but it's always important to have additional headroom in your reservoir so that if there's some type of large rain event or some type of increased temperatures that result in flooding, we can take care of that in our reservoirs, and that doesn't continue to go downstream and potentially impact lives and homes of folks. So overall, looking very good with our numbers right now in our reservoirs, and hope to see those increase a little bit more as well. Zooming out a little bit, we can see the western United States here, and each one of these dots corresponds to something that we call a SNOTEL station. In California here, there aren't as many SNOTEL stations, but the California Cooperative Snow Surveys and California State Monitoring Network fill in where the SNOTEL stations aren't. So each one of these is color-coded. And you can see in the red's kind of less than 50% of what we would expect for median at this time of year. The blues over 150%. So those blues are really what we need. And we can see, again, Southern Sierra not doing quite as well, and that extends into the southern portions of Utah and into Colorado as well. We've got those southern Rockies and northern New Mexico that just really don't have a ton of snow. And then we can see some of these darker colored dots, these kind of red dots showing relatively low elevations too. So the theme this year kind of seems to be low elevation, low latitude, and not a lot of snow. So, those sites that are up higher and at higher latitudes typically are doing better. And that, at least as far as this year are concerned, we've been seeing a lot of warmer systems. We have been seeing that rain. And so that's at least due to that partially. But still looking somewhat decent as far as water in the western U.S. Colorado started off the year strong and has pulled back a little bit, but again, not looking too bad. If we look at the overall basin conditions based off of those measurements, again, more of the same, right? We've got plenty of good moisture sitting on the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, not quite as much in the southern portions of the western states. And then once you get out onto kind of the eastern slope and plains of the Rockies, things get a little bit lighter too. But overall, looking pretty good for this time of year. And we'll hope that that can keep up. All right. So we're going to shift now and look at what is coming up and what's coming down the pipeline. Um, I'm going to start first by zooming out to our continental. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So here's a good look at what's going on with the United States and North America as a whole over the next couple weeks or so. And it seems to look like more of the same. In fact, maybe even a little bit drier. We have this high pressure system setting up out here in the Central Pacific, or kind of between California and Hawaii, and it's going to hang out there quite a bit. And that high pressure is really going to push a lot of these storm systems along the western coast of North America and into the Aleutian Islands. It's going to go ahead and push those further north. And this is something we've kind of seen as a theme so far this year. Most of our storm systems, the atmospheric rivers, are going north to southern Oregon, central Oregon, and the northern California regions. And it looks like that's going to continue to be the case. Here's another little storm system, low pressure system, getting pushed up north. So, as far as California goes, it's not looking like we're going to have a whole lot for the foreseeable future as far as precipitation. Little bits here and there, not too much. Um, if we go even further out and look at the CFS, which is a longer range model through 760 hours, which is February, a bit long, but in terms of general patterns, that high pressure stays there and pushes things north. Um, we might get a little bit of a breakdown in it from time to time. Maybe mid-month as this is showing now, but it builds right back in. And so it's going to be interesting. Realistically, if we can get that high pressure system to shift further north towards the Aleutian Islands, then what we can get is these types of systems where low pressure will come down the coast and line up well to get us lots of moisture, as I'm sure you guys just saw in Central California. When that high pressure system sits up there or further off the coast, these lows can come in and really give us a lot of moisture. So that's kind of what we're hoping for the second half of this month. Now, if we go back to the GFS, the global forecast system, and zoom in to cssl's neck of the woods, we'll let that load. We see that, not much is going to happen over the next 24 hours or so. Moving into tomorrow afternoon, though, that's when we're really going to start to see some precipitation here. Contrary to the previous storms, it looks like this should hopefully be snow here along the summit. Snow levels are looking around 5,500 feet right now. And it looks like we're going to have plenty of heavy snowfall Friday afternoon. So Saturday morning might be a good one for skiing if you're up here. After that, though, kind of dry out. And again, that high pressure system sitting out in the Pacific, it's going to prevent us from getting a whole lot of moisture. Some small things here and there, but nothing substantial really. And if we kind of take a look at what we're looking at for snowfall accumulations from that first storm, again, no point in looking really beyond Saturday because there's not much going on there, but we can see GFS is showing it's generally the most optimistic of these models as far as snowfall goes. It's showing 14 inches. GFS is the American global model. The ECMWF, the European kind of moderate range model. If my internet wants to work, maybe we'll go ahead and just push this out to 66 and see if we can get that to load. Come on, guy. There it goes. Now it's happy. So yeah, I can see 11 inches there. So, 11, 14. If you look at the National Weather Service blend of models here from NOAA, we can see something around there, around maybe 11 inches. I'm thinking in general, probably close to 6 to 12 inches as a whole. The higher peaks, which again, clearly north of I-80, should see more snow. So, 6 to 12 for most areas, higher peaks maybe get up to 18, but nothing too crazy out of this next storm. So that brings us to the longer term um, forecast and what we're seeing. Now, we want to look at precipitation rate anomaly, which is a good indication of where we're going to be dry and where we're going to be wet for upcoming months. With reds being dry, greens and blues being wet, we can see kind of this expansion of dry conditions along California, potentially even up into starting to affect Northern California as well. This is a pattern. This is kind of indicative of what we would expect from a very simple and average La Nina. Dry to the south, wet to the north. And that's what we've seen so far, even though we haven't officially been in a La Nina, but that's also what looks like we're going to stay in as we move forward. So this is through effectively the end of March, and it's looking like, at least for now, we have a likelihood of being drier during that period. As far as a probabilistic forecast, instead of one that's showing rate variability and rate variance, we can look at the NMME probabilistic forecast. So brown colors are going to be drier, green colors are going to be wetter, but these are percentages. So the likelihood of being below your average precipitation is going to be brown, and that's going to become more likely the darker the color is. So you can see kind of southern New Mexico. New Mexico as a whole really has a pretty high likelihood of being drier than normal. Unfortunately, once again, Southern California compared to the northern regions is looking drier than normal. It looks like North California might be leaning towards roughly average, and then Oregon, Washington, Idaho are looking relatively wet again. So it's kind of looking more of the same realistically as we look forward in time, and that's not necessarily always the case. Last year at this time we were 25% of average for our snowpack, and yet we had a really great second half of January and ended up above average in a lot of places, or roughly at average as we did here at the lab. So, early season is very rarely indicative of what we see for the rest of the season, but it's looking like that could be the case this year as far as the central and northern Sierra go. If we start looking at some of these other forecasts, this NCEP CFS that we were looking at earlier too, this is showing quite a bit of dry conditions out along the coast of California and then inland as well, right about where that high pressure is impacting, as you can see out there in the Pacific. So, I'm in the world of water and I'm an avid snowboarder, so I'm hoping we swap to wetter conditions, but it's not looking like that's going to be the case. So as far as NOAA's seasonal outlooks, this is effectively, let me see here. We'll switch to yeah. So this is for the next 3 months or so. We see realistically again that pattern in the southern U.S. of those drier conditions mirroring what we would expect from an average La Nina year. Down on, sorry, that was temperature, but on this bottom plot here, that's where we see that below average precipitation being likely, with the increased or above average precipitation being primarily in Northern California and up in the Pacific Northwest. It does look like we might have some around the Great Lakes as well. Um, but it's again, we're looking roughly at dry conditions to the south, and moist conditions to the north, and that same divide is kind of mirrored in our temperatures as well. We have colder than average temperatures to the north, warmer than average temperatures to the south. Now you can see this band of white that kind of sits between the two that incorporates a lot of California, including the snow lab. Those are equal chances, right? So we could either be wet or dry, could be warmer or colder. That being said, based off of the other guidance, right now it is looking like it would probably be drier and warmer than average. Same is looking, same is being shown through April. This is for February, March, and April. So we're seeing that same pattern persist. And then when we push out even further and look at April, May, and June, we start to see, below average once again really take over the Western U.S. with those warmer temperatures. So it's looking dry and warm for many of us, unless we're on the Pacific Northwest, realistically. Now, this is a analysis of what we've seen in terms of precipitation anomaly from the 4th of October until now. So basically the start of the water year until this point in time. And I did see somebody mention what water year is. That's one that I can answer quickly. Water year starts October 1st and goes through September 30th. So we are currently in water year 2025. That started October 1st and will end September 30th, 2025. But this is what we're seeing in terms of our precipitation anomalies in millimeters through that time. We do have this dry patch that's kind of extending from the Central Sierra and up into the Great Basin a little bit towards Reno and Carson City. We have plenty of dry weather through Arizona, southern Nevada, and then some really dry conditions comparatively to in the San Diego region. But look at just how wet Northern California and the Southern Oregon coast has been. Plenty of precipitation up in that area, and that's an artifact of that high pressure system and what we've seen at the larger scales, really pushing those atmospheric rivers further north than we've seen recently. And so that's what we have been seeing in these areas overall. And again, if you're comparing this to what we're expecting to see in the future, not a whole lot of difference. Precipitation anomalies, it's been dry in the southern portions, wet in the Pacific Northwest. If we go to what we're expecting, dry in the southern regions, wet in the Pacific Northwest. And then kind of, again, northern to central California on that dividing line. So as for a first briefing of the season, I'll end it there and take questions. Thank you guys for joining. I know it's still kind of holiday time, given that so much has gone on and New Year's was in the middle of the week. But yeah, I'll go ahead and go through the chat. Anybody who wants to ask a question, feel free to do so, and we'll go from there. I see Brandy asked when my team tries to access the weather conditions plots page, we only ever get loading signs no matter what browser. Yeah, Brandy, you bring up a good point. To be brutally honest with you, This is a web application based on a programming language that is really not used to make websites on a regular basis. This is an R Shiny web application that I built when I first got here to the lab and have been updating. And it typically does a pretty good job. The one problem that it can have is its response depends heavily on the actual internet speed and stability of the person using it. So some people find it works just fine, others find it takes forever to load. Um, what I can tell you is this. Although I really like the layout of this page and this website, this was never intended to be permanent, and so it's kind of developed some quirks with it as time has gone on. I'm exploring looking at some other options, um, and hopefully having either a redesign or maybe just somebody uh, building something that's a little bit more effective at conveying information rapidly and loading quicker, but not quite at that spot yet. What I will say is um, sometimes refreshing will help. And this page in general will take a while to load. I'll go ahead and show you on my computer now, um, just simply because of slow internet speeds. So be patient with it. And if you can't get access to that page, let me know and I'll be happy to give you any data that I can. Yeah, see that one took a while to load, and this one, it's going, it's trying. Maybe there it goes. The other thing that you can do, if you're interested and have the time, is simply use this download weather data button that'll bring up a zip file of everything that we're collecting. Well, not everything, but most things, and then you can plot that up too. Other questions about the season so far or our website? I'm open for anything. I'll go ahead and say these aloud in case when I upload this video to YouTube later, people don't see these. But um, Ryan Davis said, "Hey Andrew, I'm an undergraduate geography student and skier currently at Cal. I wanted to see if there was any plans for growing the CSSL across the Sierras. Also, is there any new type of instrumentation that you would like to add to the Snow Lab?" Good question, Ryan. So yeah, we're working on really expanding the Snow Lab. So back when the lab was created, it had a much larger footprint. Of course, it predates I-80, but the teams that were up here were regularly skiing to all kinds of places to do measurements, and then also had a number of stations across the state and the broader area that they would monitor and really keep a close eye on. Um, in the last several decades, prior to me getting here, the footprint of the lab, so to speak, has shrunk. Most of the work that did occurred right here in the very spot that I'm sitting. Oop, hit my microphone. But in the very spot that I'm sitting, and so that shrank things down a little bit again. I think primarily because it was easier and more cost effective. The lab is currently growing. We've been fortunate enough to get some new contracts, get some new staff on, and we're going to be putting in a couple different um, permit requests to instrument some areas both north and south of the lab. That being said, would still be pretty close to Donner Summit, right? Um, so we are expanding. We're planning on putting out more stations. We've been talking with some folks about potentially going into the Sierra to the east of Fresno and getting some stuff down in there too. So we are working on expanding. But with anything, it takes little bit of money. And so that can be challenging. Um, we want to expand, but we also want to make sure we're not doing it too quickly and ensuring that we're also doing our best work whenever we do. So that is the plan. As far as new instrumentation that we'd like to see at the Snow Lab, we're engaged in a couple projects. Um, a couple R&D projects that I'm very excited about seeing some new instrumentation here at the lab. One is one that we're running in collaboration with the California Department of Water Resources to get snowpack temperature profiles or even bulk snowpack temperature, which for decades has eluded us because of how difficult it is to work on putting things in the snowpack. Um, but at this stage, there's a certain number of instruments that we could put here. I'm feeling now after the expansion that we've done over the last 4 years or so, and going effectively from maybe one or two lab-owned sensors to now I think close to 100. There's not much else that we've been looking at. We did install a new micro rain radar this year. Actually, I should say that UNR has done that. Um, and so that'll provide some new data. We have talked to some folks at San Diego, not San Diego, San Jose State, about potentially putting a scanning LiDAR up here to look at pyrometeor concentrations in smoke plumes, but nothing that we're trying to add to the snow lab too much. If I was to say there's one instrument that I really dream about getting out there, I would love to find a way to get an X-band radar out in super remote areas, kind of similar to how Josh Worman's team did with X-band radars and chasing severe storms. But um, that's that's neither here nor there. That's kind of a wish list item. So, other questions, thoughts, favorite foods? Uh, Follow-up question, it looks like, from Ryan Davis. Would CSSL be interested in monitoring any new sites in the Carson Pass area? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, I'm an observationist by nature. Most of my scientific research has all been done based off of observation. I've done a little bit of modeling here and there, but um, my mantra is you can never have too many measurements. And even for things like our satellite program, our satellite products, or the airborne snow observatory, which uses LiDAR and scanning the surface of the planet to look at changes in snow depth over the course of the season, those still rely very heavily on ground truth observation. So, yeah, I mean, Carson Pass area could be one that would be instrumented. I'm not as familiar with that region, so we'd have to look um, uh, at that region. But oh yeah, and Higley, and you can pipe up if you want. Are you permanently muted?
Probably permanently muted if I can't find the button.
Goody.
Um,
Do I have to
Hi
change
Ryan, I
controls?
I work at DRI. Can you hear me, Andrew?
Anyway, yeah, as Ann Higley was saying, NRCS just installed a snowtel site at Lost Lakes. I know Jeff Anderson mentioned that. And then DWR has plans too, but yeah. Sounds great. Thanks, Ryan. Maybe I couldn't hear Ann. Aha. Ann, are you still there? All right. Well, I guess if there aren't any more questions, uh, thanks, Ann. Always happy for the sweet pun. Love that. Yeah, so this was a very kind of preliminary one this year. We're going to be doing these at the beginning of every month that kind of coincide with the California Cooperative Snow Surveys. Um, but obviously not just keeping it to that. So anytime there is a particularly notable event coming up, big snowstorm, potential for flooding or intense melt, uh, I may. Um, I will likely do another one. And then also, we will have eventually, I'm not sure if it'll start next month or in the one after that, some other folks that we collaborate with on these too, so that you can kind of get more of a feel, not just for what the lab's doing and where things are at with the snowpack and weather, but also some of the other research going on and maybe some different perspectives on what we're seeing. Um, so definitely stay tuned for that. I'll be emailing out as time goes on. I do see one more question that I'll address before I hop off from Dick Simpson. Dick said, "Has there been a California snow survey yet?" Dick, we are at the very end of the first snow survey of the season. With that said, the January 1st snow survey only includes 21 out of roughly 265 sites. So it's only about 8% of what's out there. And yeah, what we're seeing right now that depending on if it's the manual measurement or the automated measurements from the statewide monitoring network, that statewide we have about 106 to 108% of our snowpack. But again, as we talked about a little bit earlier, most of that is up north, and so that average can be a little bit deceptive. If you're in the central or southern Sierra. But yeah, we're just wrapping up the first one now. The first full snow survey will be completed around February 1st, depending on the weather window. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. This will be uploaded to our YouTube later if you would like to reference it at all. Looking forward to the next ones, and thanks again for tuning in. You have a great rest of your week and Happy New Year.